It is a big, heavy day in the United States of America today. It is election day here, and wherever you live in the world, I'm sure you have heard that this is happening in our country, and just the intensity of what everyone is feeling. And we wanted to acknowledge that in a way and talk about differing beliefs and differing ideas and how to communicate around that, how to even connect with yourself, and really what's underneath it all in a way. And so I have Echo with us today, and she is going to be diving into some of the things that she has learned and unlearned and kind of shifted in sharing her perspective and education with us. So welcome to the Connection Codes podcast. This is the podcast where we break open the emotions that take us from being disconnected to connected in our relationships and in ourselves. I'm your host, Tera and joining me is trauma-informed coach, co-creator of the Connection Codes parenting, and lead coach, Echo Hill-Vetter. And we are so glad you're here. Thank you, Echo.
Thanks for having me. So good to be with you.
I'm so glad to be with you always. And I have a lot of joy in talking about this topic. You were mentioning about our beliefs and our patterns and how much that even affects how we show up and present and are in relationship with each other. And I know that today we are living in a very divided world, and divided country for sure, based on a lot of these core beliefs. And so tell me, what has stood out to you? Like, what has really shaped some of that for you in learning this for others?
Yeah. Well, the first thought I have is that our beliefs are connected to our identity, right? And so hearing differing beliefs that feel opposed to our beliefs, or even if we have an experience where we begin to question our own beliefs, it's really scary. And it feels like losing a part of ourselves. And that's actually that's what's happening in the brain and body, right? We get hit with fear, we get flooded with fear, because in a way it feels like we're coming apart, right? Like we have these patterns in our brain, we have all of these neural pathways that make up how we show up in the world, how we stay safe in the world, or at least perceived safety, how we stand, how we speak, who we connect with. All of that comes from our experiences, and even actually, which we don't have time to talk about today, but even our parents' and grandparents' experiences affect how our bodies develop and how our brains develop.
Yes.
And so understanding that we're affected by the generations before us, and then we're affected by the experiences that we have had through childhood, through adulthood, and understanding how tied into our, not just our identity as in how I see myself, but also our understanding of the world. And because what we're trying to do is navigate safety, right? We're trying to show up in a way that keeps us safe and alive. That's like the basic human need, the basic human condition, the basic purpose of the brain and body is to keep us safe and alive. And so everything we do is affected by that. And so showing up, we want to know what to expect. We want to know that we understand the situation, because that's what creates safety, or at least to an extent, that's what creates safety. And so to show up and to experience something different, or hear something different, or hear something that's different than what we assumed, or what we thought we knew, or what we still believe we know, or still believe is ultimate truth or ultimate reality. Like to have any of that question, kind of like the idea of, you're sitting in a chair, it's providing a solid place for you to land. Our beliefs, especially early in life, where and especially if we've only been given one narrative, right? Which a lot of us were given. A lot of us grew up, I call it a tiny little box. And some of that was good. Some of that we needed, right? We needed stability. We needed consistency. So it's not all bad. But for so many of us, we grew up in a tiny little box where we were told there is only one way to understand reality. There's only one way to believe. There's only one way to see the world. And so if we start having experiences as teenagers or young adults, or even later in life, that that now don't fit into that box, where it feels like, oh no, the seams are coming apart, the top is opening, the tape is coming off. It feels like the world is falling from beneath us. Kind of like if that chair all of a sudden started to come apart.
Yeah.
You would startle, right?
Yeah.
You would feel fear, and you would react, and you would try to get to safety if that chair somehow started falling apart underneath you. And that's what happens for us. Like, we are held by our beliefs, especially early in life. And if we start having experiences or conversations or hearing stories that don't fit inside of that netting, that don't fit inside of that box, it's terrifying, especially at first. We can become comfortable with the discomfort, but especially at first, when we've been told this is the only way to exist, this is the only way that is true, this is the only way that we can stay safe, and then we have experiences that don't fit into that.
Yeah.
Terrifying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one thing to really think about is that your box looks totally different than somebody else's box. You know, we all grew up in these boxes, but like you said, I'm so glad you said this a minute ago, that our boxes are shaped not just by us, but by our parents, by our grandparents. And it's even at a DNA level.
Right. Yeah.
And so there's been research done that traces back things that like our ancestors experienced and fears that they had based on their life experiences, how we can have the same fear, like how we can have the same type of bodily reaction. For you're feeling tension about something and you don't know where that came from, but it may have come from your great grandmother, you know, and so therefore your box has been shaped by these other people's experiences. It is scary to change the box. It is scary to change the walls of the box. But at the same time, like, your life experiences also are going to be different than hers. You know, like, I am so grateful that my box has changed. My box, I love to redecorate. You know, even before I came upstairs, this is my third rug I've had in this living room. Wow. And Wes just said, are we going to return the rug? Like, are you going to get a different rug? And so I'm constantly changing the inside of my box. And there was a season that was really scary. And there are still walls of it that feel really scary. Like that sex wall of my box, that's a really scary one to rechange. The political wall of my box, that's a really scary one to change. The religious wall, that's a really scary one to change. And so there are moments where it can feel extremely uncomfortable. And then we can become resistant against each other because your style is different than mine. Yeah. Because we don't think that we match anymore. Yeah. When in reality, like, I remember having a conversation with my mom. I talk about her all the time on the podcast. She just needs to come on.
Oh, like, that'd be amazing.
Yeah. Like, we believe probably 95% of the same things. But that 5% can be very divisive. Wow. You know, like, it can be what people will go to war over, that 5%. Yeah. So tell me maybe just a little bit of like your own journey, not in the logistical part, but like the emotions around you realizing this and realizing you grew up in this one box and now you're finding yourself in a new box, like what that experience has been like.
Yeah, it's such a long story. So I hope we can do some follow-ups because there's so much to that, so many layers. But definitely grew up that way. Tiny little box, was told there's one way to understand the world. There's one narrative, there's one perspective, and it's the correct one. And I happen to be born into it. Lucky me, right? And then pretty quickly after becoming an adult, I began having experiences. A lot of it happened through loss. Lost a lot of loved ones through my 20s, had several miscarriages, some really, really painful experiences that did not fit the story I'd been told. Yeah. Just in how I understood the world. And so through integrity, because that was a part of my human experience, was integrity, right? Like I don't want to just ignore. I want to integrate. I want to understand what's happening here. And I want to try to stay aligned with truth. I want to try to stay authentic to my experience. And so with that pursuit of integrity, had to question, right? Because I was living here, but I was having experiences that were out here or that were just felt too big, where I just was like trying so hard to stuff them. Like, I got to make these fit. I got to make these fit. I can't make these fit. I can't make these fit. right? And so I did, out of integrity, begin to question, like, maybe some of the understandings I was given, maybe some of the information I was given was at least incomplete, right? Maybe some of it was wrong, but maybe some of it was just incomplete. And so I began asking questions from that integrity, and began to learn from teachers who believed differently than me, began to have conversations with people who believed differently than me, or who had just had different experiences, different life experiences, different backgrounds, different orientations or understandings of how the world works or what it means to be human. And so through that journey, which was incredibly long, and I'm still on that journey, what I have noticed, because it's been so long now of doing this, is that I have become, I don't know if comfortable is the right word, but at least comfortable with the discomfort of newness or of change or of someone being different than myself. And that was not true in the beginning. In the beginning of this whole process, which I would say probably was 20 years ago, because as soon as I got married and as soon as I lost that first baby, it was like, wait a minute. This is not what I was told about life. This is not what I was told about loss. This is not what I was told about justice or, you know, you do the right thing and you're rewarded. Like, this is not fitting in with what I was told. So 20 years is a long time to try to understand or to try to reorient or to try to make sense of or make meaning out of, right? That's a really long process. And I would say I probably broke through a wall about 7 years ago, which is interesting because it's also when I started learning about the connection codes, right? Right around that same time, I would say broke through a wall of getting comfortable with the discomfort of someone being different than me, or getting comfortable with the discomfort of not fully understanding. Like, where you can tell me a story and I can go, that's not been my experience. And that's okay. Like, that is completely okay. That is what's happening for you, or that's how you feel, or that's what you want, or that's what you experience. And so some kind of wall broke down around that time. And I'm so glad it did, right? Like, being on the other side. And I've heard people say that to me, where like we would be discussing an idea and they would feel so much judgment towards something, whereas I would feel curiosity, like, oh, wow, I wonder what it feels like to be in a body that experiences things that way. And they would look at me like, I can't believe that's your reaction to that. Or I can't believe that's your response to that. But that's my genuine response. That's how it actually feels. It's like, to hear another human's completely different experience. I would just want to know more. Like, but not because I have to, and not because I have to feel safe. I'm just genuinely curious. Like, what is it like to experience the world through your body and through your eyeballs and through your brain and through your history? And that doesn't have to be a threat. I'm sure there's exceptions to that, where I hear ideas. My brother and I have always had a dynamic relationship. Lots of great conversation over the years. Some things we agree on, many things that we don't. And somehow we've been able to create safety for each other, where we can have intense, passionate, dynamic conversation and agree to disagree. And so there will be moments of threat, right? Where I'm like, wait a minute, that's so different than how I see it. And that feels overwhelming, and my body's reacting, right? Like, I'm sweating a little bit, or like my breath is catching in my throat because you just said something that doesn't fit in my box, and it doesn't even fit in the box I had you sitting in either. And like, wait a minute, what? And so but it's been forever. Like, we've been this way forever. Our personalities together.
That's a great point, though, that like we even have people in our lives where suddenly we realize their box is different than what we thought their box looked like. And that
can be overwhelming.
Really overwhelming. And I've lost friendships. Like, I've had people in my life choose to not be my friend anymore once they realized my box was not what they thought my box looked like. And even years prior to the loss, I remember hiding things from them because I was like, when they find out they're not going to like me anymore, I was accurate. Man. And so it's fascinating, the idea of curiosity. I do think that is a huge element of the connection codes, is that curiosity piece that can actually help unite us all, even when our boxes look different.
Absolutely.
But it's still not always easy.
No.
And I do love that Glenn says that. Like, it's not always easy, because I still really struggle not coming from a place of judgment on certain things. And it's an area we all have our trigger topics. Like, we all have our things. And And something I'm really, really working on, and I've tried especially hard this election cycle, which has been very difficult because it's just been intense everywhere. The level of intensity, the emotion around it is so heightened from everyone.
Yep.
And so staying curious has been a challenge, but it is the only way. It is like, that is the answer. Yeah. And so you talked about like the threats. Can you share a little bit more about like how our beliefs even determine what our threats are and how to navigate those moments when we feel threatened?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that happens, so the brain loves predictability, right? Because anything unknown is a threat. Like that's how our brain experiences it. That's how our body experiences it. And so our brain is constantly working toward or orienting toward just let me know what to expect. I just want to know what to expect, right? And so there is a part of us that loves routine, loves predictability, wants to do the same thing every day because that's what's safest. Because then our brain knows, well, we've done this 1,000 times and we didn't die.
Yeah.
So let's just keep doing that because we know we're not going to die because 1,000 times is probably enough to know that we're not going to die, right? Yeah. And so our brain loves that. And so there's a part of us that shifts towards that and really craves that and really desires that. And then there's this other part of us that is always running into the unknown, right? That you show up somewhere and it's a different group of people, or they change the lighting, or they change the paint color, like you were saying with redecorating, right? And there is a part of us that enjoys that novelty. Like there is pleasure connected to novelty and to newness and to getting to see something new or hear something new or experience something new. And so there's this tension between, please just give me what you've already given me so that I know we won't die from it, / hey, this is kind of fun and exciting, right? And so kind of circling back to what I was saying about my brother, because he's such good practice for me because we have a safe relationship and yet we're both pretty dynamic. We're both pretty, passionate. Yeah. But somehow we can show up and he can present from way over here and I can present from way over here. At least that's how it feels. We're probably way more similar than not, but that's how it feels sometimes. And yet we move forward together. And it's such a fascinating dynamic. And maybe unique dynamic of I don't have a lot of people in my life that I can completely disagree with and still stay connected to and still feel safe with.
Yeah.
So it feels like great practice where it's like, okay, we just had that really intense conversation where I was sweating and my voice was shaking. And look, here we are and I'm still alive and we're still friends. Yeah. How exciting, right? So to be able to find someone like that can be incredible because what it sends that signal to your brain is, I'm okay. I'm safe. I'm alive. I had a conversation where I disagreed with someone and I'm still here. I didn't combust and he didn't combust. And in fact, we still have a friendship, right? So practice, I think, is part of it because then you adapt and you realize, oh, it's actually okay. Yeah. Was it uncomfortable? Yes. Did I sweat a lot? Yes. Did my voice shake? Yes. And here I am and I'm alive and I'm safe and I'm healthy and I'm okay. And so is he. So there's those two parts of us. There's that tension within us of we are curious or we can be curious about something new. And our brain desperately wants predictability. Yeah. Desperately wants what it has already experienced so that it knows what to expect, so that it knows that we are safe.
Yeah. Yeah. And I also think that getting to the core is really important. And so I think about, my mom and I had a very honest conversation probably about 2 weeks now. And I just asked her, like, what is your fear? What is happening with you? And so I think that so often we get caught up in the logistics and we're like, oh yeah, this rug is ugly and this paint color is horrible. And that over there is definitely good. That lamp is going to fall on your head. It's definitely going to kill you versus asking, ooh, what was happening for you when you chose that paint color and what was happening? And so even like asking those specific questions of like, what is the fear? What is happening for you in that? And then sharing from your core, that is how I have found the best way to keep me on track, to staying curious. Wow. And from their beliefs not becoming a threat to me. Because if they're just sharing, this is what I believe, that it feels very threatening versus I have fear about these 3 things. Yeah. And even though I don't share that fear, it is not a threat. So now I can come to the conversation with open ears from such a different perspective and place where we can now connect through it, even though what we're seeing looks different.
Yeah. I think understanding the human condition or the human experience. I know one of the things that's helped the most for me is learning about neuroscience and understanding what's actually happening, like what is firing in the brain versus the really complicated, like we have to take so many more steps to believe the things we believe or to connect to the ideas, like these really complicated, complex ideas that make up our society and civilization and the world. Like how many steps from, okay, but what's firing in the brain? Kind of like you were just saying with the core. Oh, I'm experiencing fear. Like that's rock bottom foundational. There's nothing beneath that. I'm experiencing fear. That's what's happening in my brain, my nervous system, my body, my nerves. And so that's the connector, right? Like that's the human experience because you experience fear. I experience fear. That's the foundation. That's what connects us. That's what makes us both real. That's what makes us both human. That's our not just our solid ground, but our shared foundation, right? And then on top of that is all of these really complicated ideas that of course have a million different versions, right? And so we feel like, Tera, you're way over there and I'm way over there because we have a million different experiences and a million different ideas and we've read a million different books and have a million different memories. Yeah. And so if you start comparing all of those details, then I feel a million miles from you because you have a million unique experiences that make up you and I do too. And so you're way over there in Minnesota and I'm way over here in Florida. Like we're a million miles apart when actually, no, you're human. I'm human. I experience fear. Your brain is just trying to keep you alive. My brain is just trying to keep me alive. Yeah. And if we can kind of boil it down to that and find that connection through that shared human experience, I think that's when we can maybe put some of that into perspective of like, we're all just doing the best we can. Even though it doesn't always feel that way, we really are doing the best we can with what we know and with what we have and with what we've been given and with the experiences that we've had. And we're also all just, it's like our best guess, like as far as how we understand things, right? And anyone who says otherwise, like take it all with a grain of salt. Like anyone who says 100%, this is ultimate reality, this is exactly what is true. Yeah. Instead, if we could have some what I would call humility and some perspective to say, my teeny tiny self, my teeny tiny human experience, my teeny tiny human brain will never know everything, right? But I'm going to make my best guess. I'm going to function off of my best guess. Of course I am, right? Because I want to be a good friend and I want to be a good mom. I want to be a good partner. And so I'm going to do the best I can with what I have. And I'm going to make decisions based on the information that I think is correct. And then hopefully I will have enough awareness and humility if I receive new information where I go, oh, that wasn't ideal. I was missing a piece or I could have done that better. Hopefully I will receive that and integrate that. Yeah. And then tomorrow I'll be doing things slightly differently because I received new information that now feels like, okay, that feels more complete. Like I was missing that piece and now that makes sense. And so I'm going to try that. Yeah. And I'm going to continue to do the best I can with what I have. Yeah. And I'm going to continue to make my best guess.
I think the pain in that for me, because it's like I 1000% agree with all of that. The pain in it for me is that, and I'm saying this also recognizing that this human that I would be describing has their own life experiences of why they would be closed off. Yeah. There's pain when the information has been there this whole time. And in my head, I'm like, but you chose not to see it. Wow. The information was available to you and you turned a blind eye to it. And now we're all in this thing together. And so that's where I think that my own judgment comes out and where and I'm saying that because I think there are other people listening that they may be feeling even judgment for what we're saying right now. Yeah. That when we can even be curious with ourselves. Yeah. And so we had the curiosity about other people, but for me to also get curious about myself, that's where the growth can come. That's where I'm actually open to new information sooner. Yeah. I'm able to receive the information because I've opened myself up to learning and growing and getting curious about things instead of just being judgmental straight off the bat. Right. And so I would challenge people that even as they're listening to this, whatever's happening in their body, to get curious about it.
Absolutely.
And to, as you are currently driving through your neighborhoods and you're seeing all of these different signs, and the news is going to be on in about 12 hours telling us all of these results for things, instead of picking up the phone and like texting the person that was on the opposing side, unfortunately, because that's where we're at in the world, to get curious.
Yeah.
To get curious about how you can show up in this moment in a way that's open and in a way that's understanding and in a way that like recognizes that there's a lot of fear taking place.
Absolutely.
And being able to show up for our neighbors, understanding that they're in a place of fear versus in a place of like judgment, that is the only way we can all move forward as a whole.
Yeah. Well, and that's where I think connection codes is so important and so crucial. Like it's the center in terms of emotional awareness and emotional processing. Because if I don't realize that that's what's happening for you, and if I don't realize that that's what's happening for me, we can't have effective communication. Right. And so to not know that I'm flooded with fear, or to not know that you're flooded with fear, or to not understand what's happening in the brain and body, that our only option is to either not talk about it or to argue about it. Right. Where we aren't able to see each other. We aren't able to understand or hold space. And really kind of, I know I already mentioned this, but kind of circling back again, because it all comes back to safety. If I don't feel safe, I can't change my beliefs. I can't question my beliefs. I can't live in integrity. Like that's what holds this whole thing. That's what makes this whole thing work, is creating safety for myself and creating safety in relationship so that I'm safe enough to question my beliefs, or safe enough to process my emotion, or safe enough to hear your beliefs if they're different than mine. Right?
Yeah.
And to still stay connected to you if it's a healthy relationship and one that we want to continue, right?
Totally. Yeah.
But to remember, to keep that in mind of like, if we can process our emotion, if we can be aware of our emotion, aware of what's happening in the brain and body, aware of what's happening with the emotions, we do have a chance. Like we do have hope to be able to process together and learn together and understand each other and hopefully move forward, because the goal is mutual thriving, right? My hope, my goal would be that my neighbor is thriving and that my spouse is thriving and that my children are thriving. And so to be able to show up for each other really does come back to safety. It comes back to emotional awareness. It comes back to being able to communicate those emotions so that we are creating safety for ourselves in our body and for each other in our relationships. And so that's where I think it all, we can talk about a million different topics, but the foundation of all those topics is emotional health and emotional awareness and emotional connection. Totally. Everything is built on top of that. That's how the brain works. That's how the body works.
Yeah. Thank you. And thank you for sharing on this as well. I think that it was such an important topic for today specifically, but also it applies just to life in general, and creating a place in a world that is open and that we are growing and that we are learning from each other and our experiences. So now we are going to do the core emotion wheel, which is the tool that Dr. Glenn and Phyllis, our founders, created that actually helps you access those emotions so you can understand what's happening with your own body, within your own beliefs, so you can recognize when a threat is there and you can help decipher what is happening for you in those moments so you can communicate and stay connected to those around you despite what your boxes, as our analogy was, look like. And so do you want to do it or do you want me to? Okay. I always have a hard time when it's not in front of me. I have anger. I have anger because I feel like the media and the news has weaponized our emotions against us.
Wow.
And there's been a lot of emotional, fear mongering across the board. And so the weaponization of emotions. I feel shame for the times that I am judgmental, that I don't get curious enough about those around me. And that I can come from a place of judgment. I have shame about that. I have guilt because I do think that actually my guilt is not involving my kids more in the conversation. They've heard about it peripherally, but I do wish that they knew a bit more of what was happening.
Wow.
I think it's really important because it's history being made. And I want them to know, to understand that.
I hear that.
I have lonely, so much lonely, because my box has changed lots and lots of times. I'm a different person than I was when I was 21, which means my box doesn't fit where I grew up. And so that's a really lonely place to be. Sad. I feel sad. Something is missing or damaged. I feel sad for the loss of like love in our country. Like that's lost for us just to be able to like, I look back at old debates that we used to have, and just like the camaraderie and like the joking and the cheering each other on despite differences, that's been lost. And I feel a lot of sadness about that. Fear, so much fear. So much fear for everyone, no matter where you fall, that the judgment will divide us even further and that people are trying to pin us against each other. And I have fear that they're going to succeed in that, but a lot of hope that they don't. And hurt over the media, hurt over that. And joy. I do have a lot of joy that there is hope, that we can learn from each other, that we can see each other. I have some really beautiful relationships with people that are different from me. New relationships that would be easy for me to walk away from because they're brand new. But we get curious about each other and it feels mutual. And I feel a lot of joy about that for sure.
Wow.
So thank you. Thank you for
sharing all
letting me process all of that. And thank you to our community. Hopefully that you are safe spaces for us to come and have these conversations and share. And I do encourage each of you, especially those of you that are U.S. based, to do a core emotion wheel tonight, either with yourself, with a safe person, just so as things are happening, we can stay connected, because I do know that things are shifting and there is an energy around us. It's really a painful energy. And I think that it is up to us as individuals to show up connected to ourselves and to stay connected with each other. And understanding all of this comes from identity. I love that you started with that. But seeing each other from their identity, and that's our core belief. It's our sense of self and who we are, and honoring each other in that. So thank you for being here. And we do all of this because
you need this.
You deserve this.
Let's do this.
Let's do this.